Oh, Gitavach, Gitrach, Gitrach. Okay, we're just about to get started. Okay, gewaltig. Let's see if I can get the Gemara where I need it to be. Tazoi. Zog to Heilige Gemara. So I'm gonna, even though I don't have the daf on the screen, I'm starting from the last couple of words at the bottom of Nun Zayin Amud Beis, where a Maimar said, if you find an egg inside a bird that's a treifa, Shich lo kamo is a sira. Any egg that was in the chicken when the chicken became treifa is also alta treifa. And Rashi explains it's because uber yerech imayhu, and therefore the ima nitrif, and it became treif. It received the status of treif exactly when the mother received its status of treif. Mikan veilech, if there are more eggs that start to form in the chicken after the chicken became treif, that already has the input of the male and the female. Umutter, because as Rashi says, whenever you have a zev goyim, he holds that it's mutter. So what's very important to understand is I had a little bit of difficulty. I know our Baruch had a pshat, but I had a little difficulty understanding when you apply uber yerech imay and when you apply zev goyim. So I don't have a svara answer, but the Chazon Ish says from the Gemara here you have a raya. It's like a zoich chukas hatayah. From the Gemara here you have a raya that uber yerech imay only applies the instant the animal becomes treifa. Once the animal is treifa, it's not becoming oil treifa, it's still treifa, but uber yerech imay doesn't apply. Uber yerech imay applies only at the moment that it became treifa. So anything that's in the mother at the moment that it became treifa gets painted with the same brush as and identified as a treifa. Anything that happens later, the word uber yerachimoy, that whole cloud doesn't apply. So the reason why it doesn't apply, I don't know. But the Chazon says you have such a right from our Gemara. The uber yerachimoy is only ima nitrif. When the mother becomes treifa, at the same time, anything inside the mother becomes treifa. After that, you don't have uber yerachimoy. So only way to after would be if you held zev v'zeh garim is also. But a Maimar holds zev v'zeh garim is mutter. That is the mimer of a Maimar. Eisei Rabashi la Maimar. So Rabashi had a kasha to a Maimar. We're going to shortly learn about a machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanon about a vlad that was found in the treif. Not an egg, but an actual vlad, so a mammal that has an uber in it. What would the halacha be? But whatever that machlokes is, which we'll get to soon, the Brisa says v'shovin v'veitzas treifa she'asura. Everybody agrees, even if you hold the vlad of a treifa is not asura, everybody holds that the egg of a treifa is asura. Why? B'pnei shagidla or shagadla be'isr. It developed in isr. Now, if it developed in isr, it's clearly mashma that it developed after the bird became treifa. So it's not working with Shavia Nafshe Chitu. It's not working with Uber Yerech Imoy. So if it's not working with Uber Yerech Imoy, don't you have a raya that Zev Zeh Goyim is Aser? So Gemara, no. There it's not Zev Zeh Goyim. Also, Medisaf Me'ara. If a Zohar is bought on the Nekeva, that will prompt the creation, the development of an egg. But that prompting the development of an egg could come even without a Zohar. If it's nischamim bekarka, whatever that means. So if you had an egg that didn't have a zev goyim, it was developed in the mother without any input from a zachar, there v'shaven b'veitzas treifa shasura b'nei shagat lebeser. Frank the Gemara, why did the Gemara have to answer that? Why didn't the Gemara answer that the bride that said v'shaven b'veitzas treifa shasura is speaking about shichla, about an egg that was in it when it became treifa? Dr. Gemara, the Lashon HaMishnah wouldn't stim. Because in Kain Godla, it developed Gomra Mivoyim. Gomra, V'shavim B'veitis Treifa, Shasura, Mipnei Shagomra B'Yisr. Because its Gemara was B'Yisr. Because the egg was there already. Godla B'Yisr is mashma that it only started to develop after the mother became a Treifa. Therefore, the only way to explain that everybody agrees it's a Treifa is if it's not a case of Zegorim, it's a case of the Safno Me'ara. Zog to Gemara, Elahodetnan. Now let's get to the Machlokas itself. Elahodetnan Vlad Treifa. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Lo Yikra. Rabbi Eliezer says if you have the blood of a Treifa, you're not allowed to bring it as a carbon, obviously because it's considered a Treifa. Lo Yikrav L'Gavim Mizbeach. Rabbi Yeshua Omer doesn't have it in a Treifa, and Yikrav L'Gavim Mizbeach. Now you might ask, if the whole shayla is if it's a Treifa or not, why would we be discussing L'Gavim Mizbeach? Why doesn't the shayla if you're allowed to eat it? The Gemara is going to ask that shayla soon. So Zog the Gemara, we have a machlokes if you could be makar of la treifa on the mizbeach, which is called a treifa. The makar in what is the machlokes Torah? So first of all, it has to be speaking b'shenitrafa ulu b'soif ibra. It has to be speaking that first it became treifa and then it developed the vlad. Why? Because if the vlad was already developed when it became treifa, we have uber yerachima. Everybody agrees uber yerachima. So it must be, if there's a machlokes, it has to be where the vlad only developed after the animal became treifa. And therefore, Rabbi Eliezer, who holds you not allowed to be makbid on the mizbech, because it has it didn't have a treifa, Savar hills Zev Zegorim is also. Rabbi Yeshua Savar Zev Zegorim is mutter. And what does a maimer paskin like? He's going to hold Zev Zegorim is mutter, because he said earlier that Zev Zegorim is mutter, which is very gishmak. Because Rabbi Elazar is a shamuti, he was considered to be a chayrim, and we pass like Rabbi Yeshua. So a maimer hasn't made it in the shade, he's passing like Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua Savar Zev Zegorim is mutter. Frank the Gemara, if that's the machlokes, merely whether or not it's a treifa or not, at the miflagi legavoya, why are they arguing about whether or not this is kosher for a carbon? The shayla should be if you're allowed to eat it or not. So the Gemara, not only does Rabbi Yeshua hold that it's not a treifa, because Zev Zegorim is mutter and you're allowed to eat it, it's even flawless that you're allowed to be makriv as a carbon. In fact, the Gemara believe lahedit ladiacha koicha Rabbi Eliezer. Lahedit nami aser. Why didn't they want to show the koicha humra that it's aser even according to Rabbi Eliezer? Zok to Gemara, even by hedit. Zok to Gemara, koiach teira adaflei. We always like highlighting the koiach that teira. And that's why we say it's speaking by kachim, and even by kachim, according to Rabbi Yeshua, it would be a kosher. About it. Then the Mishnah goes on, umoidim bebeitzas treifa shasura, like we explained earlier, it's speaking by the safna me'ara, the chad goyim. Beautiful. It's a beautiful pshat how a meimar understands the machlokes, Rabbi Eliezer Rabbanon, and how he learns that if it's an egg in a chicken that became treifa, hula alma moida, that it's going to be a treifa. Now, the question that comes up, can a treifa conceive? So from what we just learned here, it's clear that we're clearing if it was nitrifa and then the sabra. So clearly from this mahalach, the Gemara says quite clearly that a treifa could become a muberes. But not everybody holds it. So Zog the Gemara, Rabbi Acha Soverloch, Rabbi Acha Bar Yaakov. On the bottom line of Nun Zayin,
could you move up the Gemara?
I'm sorry?
Could you move up the Gemara?
Sure.
Please.
Is this better?
No.
Oh, so you mean this way?
It's not moving.
Give it a second because I'm all the way at the top. Is it up to the top yet?
No.
Reborch, do you see it at the top?
Yeah.
Yes, it could be your internet's not updating. So Zok Gemara, this is going according to Acha Yaakov. At the bottom of Nun Zayin and base, right before the Gemara introduced Hamemar, the Gemara quoted Rabbi Acha Yaakov as saying that not only will a treifa be able to live, a treifa can also become a mi'uberes. So Zok the Gemara, that's very consistent with how we just learned now that a treifa could become a mi'uberes. So Zok the Gemara, Rav Acha Savalak, Rav Acha B'Yakov Umasni Lo L'Da'Meimar Kedamorim. Rav Acha held like Rav Acha B'Yakov, and therefore he learned Pshat in a Meimar and in the Machloik is exactly how we just learned. However, Ravina Loi Savar Lo Kidir Rav Acha B'Yakov. Ravina held that a treifa cannot become uberes, so that changes the whole picture over here. A Meimar couldn't possibly have said that eggs that come later, because eggs couldn't have come later if in fact there was a treifa. So therefore, Umasni Lad Ladam Meimar, he has a different version of what a Meimar said. Behind Mishnah. Amar Meimar, this is what a Meimar said. Hani boy, the suffix treifa, if you have eggs that are a suffix treifa, and you don't know if you're allowed to eat them, the shich lakama, those that were in the animal, when it became a treifa, so there's developed eggs, you don't know if it's treifa or not. So mashin and lu, you need to wait and watch this bird. If this bird develops another egg, it's a raya that it wasn't a treifa. Therefore, sharion, the completed eggs that we have, will be mutter because it's a gloy milsa that this bird was not a treifa. But viloy, if this bird never develops any more eggs, then asiron, then these first eggs that were in it when it became treifa, because of uber yerach imoy, will be aser al treifa because clearly this bird became a treifa. Eite Ravashi la Meimar. Ravashi had a kasha on the Meimar. What was his kasha? As follows. Because again, Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Shua, Umoidin, they both agree. Vevetas treifa kirasura mipnei shegadla beiser. An egg that developed in a bird that was treifa is aser because it was developed beiser. Clearly, it says that it could develop an egg, even though it's a treifa. Amarlei, he answered, Hasam with the shich lakama. That writes that it says is speaking in the eggs that were there already. Frank the Gemara, we just said that that's not the right lashon. Imkein gadla gomer mevoila. It shouldn't say it developed in the egg. It should say it was completed in the egg. So it can't be that it's speaking with the shich lakam. So Gemara and Echnami will change it. Ni gomra will change the word, and everything fits in beautifully. That was easy. Elahaditnan. So let's go now and dig into the machloikis itself of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yishua. Elahaditnan vla treifa. Rabbi Eliezer omer lo yikrav legav mizbech. Rabbi Yishua miyik. If it has to be speaking kisheibro ulubasayf nitrafa, because otherwise it should be for sure a treifal uber yerchima. So if it's kisheibro ulubasayf nitrafa, Rabbi Eliezer savar fakert. I'm sorry, kisheibro ulubasayf nitrafa. It's speaking where first it was a muberis because it couldn't have become muberis after it became treifa. It had to have been already on Uberis when it became treifa. So now it's a child of Uber Yerachimai. And that's what we'll have to say the Machlokes it was. And therefore it's a treifa because its mother became a treifa. Rabbi Shua Savar, Uber Lav Yerechimayu. And therefore, even though the mother is a treifa, it doesn't make the blood into a treifa. Frank the Gemara, Ihachi. If that's the case, if it's all a child, if it's a treifa, argue if you're allowed to eat it. Gemara lo diacha kol chayd Rabbi Yeshua. Zok the Gemara. But let's look ahead here. Lo diacha kol chayd Rabbi Lezer lo. They tell you other play like we said. Umoidim vada, and everybody agrees. But veitas treifa kasura when it's b'dishlich lakama. My timer. So now we have a problem. Because if you hold Uber Lav Yerachimai, if you hold like Rabbi Yeshua Uber Lav Yerachimai, so why is the egg different than the Uber? Why would the egg be Treifa? So the Gemara, my timer, Gufahi. And Rashi says Gufahi means that it's Mu'ura Begidin. It's Mu'ura Begidin, it's connected to the mother. Either umbilical cord connected to the mother, I don't know. The Mu'ura Begidin, I guess it's like intertwined there. It's very much part of the goof of the animal. Therefore, everybody is moida that it's a treifa. Now, it's very interesting, Toshis points out, because from our Gemara, you see clearly that an uber is less yerech imoy than an egg is the mother, right? Because the Gemara says the egg is mamish the mother, and therefore, if the mother's a treifa, it's egg treifa. Nevertheless, an uber is lav yerech imoy. The problem is, Toshis asks from a Gemara in Bava Metzia. We know the halacha is if a shor tam shtoises, the liability of the owner is limited to the value of the shor, right? So what if this para shtois, but the para was a mi'uberes? Can you collect from the vlad? Zok the Gemara, you can collect from the vlad because the vlad is considered part of the mother. That's the opposite of uber lav yerachim. Mashenkin, the Gemara says, what about a chicken that stoices? For sure, you cannot collect from the egg because the egg is pirsha ba'alma. Our Gemara says pum fakert. So Tosha wants to suggest maybe the reason why over there the egg is not part of the chicken is because it's speaking about an egg that's not or begidden. Speaking about the egg that's mamish ready to be hatched. And to Behema, Tosha says a little bit of a shot, but it's interesting that there by Nezikin it's exactly the opposite than it is lagabi treifa.
But by the Uber, yeah, by the Shorsh Nagach, it's also it helps the Negicha, the Uber.
So it's often in the Negicha.
Huh?
Because the Uber also shloks.
Yeah.
It could be that's what Tosha says. The Uber also shloks. Kizok to Gemara Vaitin. The Hilchasa, halacha lamaisa. If you want to do a litmus test to determine if an animal is treifa, if you have a suffix, v'zacher, if it's a male, kol shnei masar chodesh. Your only option is to wait for a year, and if it survives a year, then you can assume it's not a treifa. So clearly, it's going according to the Mandamar, who holds a treifa can live up to 12 months. But if it's in the keva, you have an earlier solution. Kol sheni alevis. If we see that it gets pregnant, then you have a raya even earlier than a year that it's not a treifa. Amar Avuna. Kol beria. Now we're going to a simple, easy gemara. Kol beria she'ein ba'etzem einim eskayim yud beis chodesh. Any creature that has no bones in it, like a mushy insect, like a jellyfish, cannot live a day more than 12 months. Amar Papa, Zokya Papa, Shmami Namid Rafuna, Hada Amar Shmuel. Based on what we just learned from Rafuna, that a mushy a thing without bones, a thing without a skeleton, cannot survive more than 12 months, if we combine it with a different halacha that Shmuel taught us, and that is Kisha Shliya Be'ibeh Osr. Now, in those days, they believed in something called spontaneous generation, that a sheretz, an insect found inside a fruit, could have been created from inside that fruit. Now, Shmuel taught us that it says, Kol sheretz ala oretz. A sheretz is not also to be eaten by a yid unless it crawled on the ground. So if it developed in a fruit that was mechubal karka, then it's osir al sheretz because it was sheretz al oretz. But if the sheretz only developed once the fruit was severed from the tree, so that sheretz is not osir. Why isn't it osir? Because it never tread on the ground. So that's what Shmuel said. Hadam Shmuel kisha she'esliya be'ibei is asura because it's mechubal karka. Let's turn on to Omid Beis. Therefore, Hani Tamer Dekat. What if you have dates that's in a jug? Clearly, they're not Mechubal Karka. And you found insects in them. Now, you don't know, were these insects in the fruit already when it was Mechubal Karka back then, and therefore it's usher to eat these insects as part of the dates? Or maybe these insects only formed once the fruits were cut, and therefore you can eat the dates with the insects, no question asked. So Hani Tamer Dechada, the simple solution is wait 12 months. If you wait 12 months and the insects are still alive, then you know they're mutter because they must have sprouted after the pears were cut from the tree. Because if they were sprouted while the pears were on the tree, 12 months has already passed and they would already be dead. So therefore, that's a perfect litmus test. If you have dates in a jug and they have worms in them, and you don't know if these worms are were mechubal karka at one point or not, you wait 12 months. If 12 months passes since it was cut down and these worms are still alive, you know for sure that they developed inside the fruit after they were cut down, and therefore you can eat it with the worms if you're not yicked out by it. So Omar Rav said, less baka bar yoima. There's no such thing as a gnat, spelled GNAT, that's more than a day old. Because the lifespan of a gnat is 1 day. The less didva, and there's no fly, bashata, that's a year old, because the maximum lifespan of a fly is a year. How could you say that? There's a saying, a famous saying, which indicates that the mosquitoes can live 7 years. Because the Amr Inchi, the Velt Zok, Sheb Shani, Amra Baksa Mibaka. 7 years, Miss Skeeto was fighting with Mr. Skeeto. And she said, my husband, you're a chazer. You fresh for yourself and don't share with the family. The Amra Lay, she tells him for 7 years, Tazite Lebar Mechuza. I saw this big fat gepasha to eat from Bar Mechuza. The Sacha B'maya. It's a osgeweikt in the Wasser in the mikveh. The Solok, and he came out of the mikveh. The Ichrich Besadinin, and he put himself on like a schmucker, soft, white spa bathrobe. And you, my husband, Mr. Skeeto, sat on him, umatus mine, and just osgetzapt and osgeprotten am blit, below. He never told me, and I couldn't enjoy. So she has tinnitus for 7 years. It must be that it lives for 7 years. Zok to Gemara, Omer Lay, you're asking me a kasha from insect years? Ulatamech, I'm going to ask you about another saying that makes no sense. Hadamri Inchi, Pitin Mani Pazala, 60 kalim of steel, that's a very heavy weight. That's the amount of punch the mosquito has. I'm saying mosquito, but it's a type of insect. The mosquito has in his jackhammer of a bite, meaning he has a very powerful bite. It's like 60. It's like he has 60 big kalim, heavy kalim around him. Mi ika iu gufe kamava. You're talking about a weight that's 1,000,000 times the weight of the mosquito itself. It doesn't make sense. Ella, you know what type of 60 kalim of steel we're talking about that this insect carries? The money to two. Mosquito-sized kalim, miniature kalim. We're talking about a mosquito kalim. When we say 7 years, it's 7 mosquito years. That might be less than a day. Not awesome. We learned in the Mishnah. Behema balas hey raglayim. What if a behema, instead of having 4 feet, it has 5 feet? Or it only has 3 feet. Arrange them mum, you wouldn't be able to bring it as a cargo. That's that's only got an extra arm, like a foreleg, or missing one. But if it's on the hind leg, that would make it a treifa. If it's missing one, the male, but if it had one, why should it be a problem? Time called yaser cannot dummy. If it is extra, it's like it's cut off. There was a animal Ta'avala, heart the sanadivi. If you remember, the sanadivi was the first part of the intestine that comes out of the stomach. And remember, we said sanadivi means the ze'ev hates it. It's such a miasa part to eat that if the ze'ev grabs it, he'll actually bring it back. So it had two. So that's like a defect. It has two. I threw the Ravina. They brought it to Ravina to see if this animal is a treifa. V'tarfa. Why? Midir Rafuna. Because of Rafuna's halacha, that's something extra. It's like it's taken away, which means it has the din of nikvu b'nei ma'ay. However, if there's two of these things, but v'shafchan adadi, they join each other, then we look at them like it's one big one, and it's going to be ksheva. Hey, guvsa davanavka mebeikate lo glila. A new pipe developed inside the four stomachs of a cow, and it went from the base of koisais to the huglila, which Rashi says is the keres. It went into the keres. I'm sorry, to the hemsis. It went into the hemsis. So you have now a new path that's going to allow the food to go in the wrong direction. Sarva Rashi l'mitzvah. Rashi thought, this is an extra. Yes, sir. It's like it's going to be treifa. Amar Rafuna, not so fast. Amar le Rafuna, Mar bar Chia Ravashi. Kol hanei chivui briyasa hachiyislim. This is not an unusual thing. There's many animals that live in the wild that have exactly this structure. We had this same taina when it came to the una de varda of the lung, where someone said it's an extra una and it's going to be a treifa, and someone said, "What are you talking about?" So therefore, it's not a treifa. So then, on a similar note, ahu gufsa da'ava ma'avra, that another new pipe that went from because of the basic causes l'kasha to the carrots. So Vival Marbar Avachi heard before that it's not a problem. So Samar Marbar Avachi Lakshura, he said that maybe there should also be no problem. You can't say that. You can't compare one thing to another when it comes to treifas. Maybe that pipe is the derech, and therefore it's not a treifa, but this pipe is the treifa. Heicha de itmar itmar, heicha de lo yitmar lo yitmar. You can't just apply halacha by one treifa to a different treifa. Hey, Nazir by Shila, Raft of Chai de Tzipure. Nazir by Shila was the head shoichet of Tzipure, Lefnei Rebbe in front of Rebbe. Al Shnei b'nei ma'ayin hayoytim min ha'behema. What if after the stomachs, the large intestine splits into two? You have two large intestines coming out. The echad shei treifa. It's going to be treifa.
Yosy, yep, is interference. I hear other.
So let me know if it's still interfering. Okay. So Zog to Gemara, you have the main intestines came out in two pieces, two channels. Uchenegden ba'oif kshera, by a behemoth streifa, by the oif kshera. But medavor mamurim sheyochim b'shtei mekoymes. That's if there's two separate exits from the stomach, one going to one intestine and one going to another intestine, a redundant intestine. That's a treifa. But if they come out of one place and then they split up, and they're only split for a length of an etzba, and then they join again, so you have one long pipe that in the middle splits up a little bit and then joins again. There, that would be kshera. So the question is, what does this mean exactly that it splits up and then joins again? It means the pipe splits into two and then it joins back again. If they split up, even if they don't join up again, which doesn't make sense because it just says it's ke'etzba. So that makes sense. If they split up for the length of an etzba, then they join up, it's kosher. And even if they don't join back together, what does it mean ayat ke'etzba? So the Gemara this long intestine then eventually goes to the colon, and then eventually it goes to the anus, mamish, to the discharge. So if right before the discharge it joins up, and now there's only one discharge, only one muffler, one tailpipe, then it can be kosher. But if there's actually two tailpipes, like a monster truck coming out of the back of this cow, that will be a treifa. Dr. Gemara Baiter, Rabbi Yehuda Omer im nitla hanoitzapsu. Rabbi Yehuda said on a bird, one of the treifas is if it's missing all of its down, its whole shield fell off. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shmuel, Amar Davarech. This halacha of Rabbi Yehuda that noitza is an integral part of the animal stems with a halacha that Rabbi Shmuel taught us legabe the halacha of pigel. Rabbi Yehuda had amar that an animal is a treifa if it loses its noitza. Rabbi Shmuel did not. Rabbi Shmuel learner and noitza mitzdarefes. We know that if you have kavana to eat a kazayis of a carbon chutlas manoi, it becomes pigel. Well, what if the kazayis that you had in mind to eat wasn't pure meat? It had skin and it had noitza as part of the kazayis. Zok Rabbi Shmuel, it's mistarefes. So you see, he holds also that it's an integral part of the animal. So it stems that if it's missing the noitza, it should be a treifa. Amarava, you have no raya whatsoever. Dilmaloy, Kaan like Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Maybe Davka by treifas, Rabbi Yehuda said the noitza is important. Elodin treifa, the leka midi the maginale. If it doesn't have any noitza, it's not protected, and that's why it's a treifa. But it doesn't mean that it's part of the meat. I believe if gulei, maybe karbonis firlei, that there won't be mitzar. V'yatkan lo kam Rabbi Shmuel, and even Rabbi Shmuel who said it is mitzar for pigel, elin of gulei, it has a din of botzer look at a pigel. I believe in treifa, aguni le make it. But look at a treifa, who said the animal can't live without its noitza? So therefore, these are two independent machlokes, and one has nothing to do with the next. Zok delige mishnah. Another set of conditions that do not make an animal treifa. Achuzas dam, high blood pressure. Vamuchemes, if the animal inhaled too much smoke. Vametzunenes, if it caught a cold. Visha'achla hardufni, if it ate hardufni, which is poisonous to animals but not humans. Visha'achla tzoyes tanagoylim, it licked off your windshield after a long trip. Oishashasas mayim haroyim, or it drank water that was left uncovered that a snake might have injected venom into. Shera, all of these animals you're allowed to eat. They're not treifas. But achlos hamamoves, if the animal ate what would be poison for a human, or if the animal actually was bitten by a snake, muteris mishum treifa, it's not considered a treifa, but basura mishum sakonos nefashos. It's also to eat because you might be ingesting that venom and it could kill you. Amar Shmuel, Hilita chaltis, if you forced chaltis, because the animal wouldn't eat it on its own, if you force it to eat chaltis, the animal's a treifa. My timer, what's the reason? The the plant is sharp and it will actually puncture his bnei mai. That's why he's going to be a treifa. Mozer Rab Shizbi, Rab Shizbi Akasha. The Brisa says, Achuzas dam, Bama Ushenes, Vishachar Dufni, Vishachar Taris Tanagoyim, Vishazas Mai Maroyim, Hilita Tia, and Chaltis. So you see, even if it ain't Chaltis, it's going to be kosher. Upal Palin, Achlas Hamamabas Ksheya. Then it's muteris which trade basura b'shum zakanas of all. So kosher childas have childas. The rule said if you force childas down an animal's throat, it makes it into a treifa. Yet the Brisa says if it ain't childas, it's kshera, and the Mishnah says if it ain't hamamavas, it's asur mishum zakanas nefashis. Yet the Brisa says achlas hamamavas is kshera. So those are two kashas. Zog to Gemara, kosher childas and childas, kosher samamavas and samamavas. Zog to Gemara, childas a childas loy kasher, kan baal, kan bekar. The leaves won't damage the intestines. That's what the Bryce is talking about. If you fed the animal leaves, it's no problem. But when Shmuel said if you fed the animal chaldas, it's a treifa, that's bekartin, that's with the stems that are very sharp. Samamavas and samamavas loy kasher. It's not true that the Bryce says samamavas is not a sakana. Because hada. The samamavis in the Brisa means a samamavis that can only kill a behema but not kill a person. The samamavis that the Mishnah is talking about is a samamavis that can even kill a person. But Frey to Gemara, samamavis to behema, why would the Brisa list that off as an independent item? Hainu hardufni. That's hardufni. We said hardufni is a poison for animals. So Gemara, Trey Gabni, samamavis. Maybe there's two types of samamavis. Zokimar Teya. Teya, the Brisa said, is not a problem. My Teya, what is Teya? Omer Rabbi Yehuda, Zok Rabbi Yehuda. Let's turn on to Nun Tes Amar Aleph. Ikra de Marita. It's the shirish of a plant called Torah. I don't know what this plant is. Omer Rabbi Yehuda. Haiman the Ochel Tilsa, Takli, Chaltis. If someone eats 3 measures of weight worth of Chaltis, I'll leave a rekana on an empty stomach, it's going to kill him. Mishtalach moshbe. It's going to heat up his body so much that his skin is going to dissolve right off of him. This happened to me once. I only ate 1 measure of it. If I wouldn't have jumped into water quickly to cool myself off, I would have lost my skin. Now, jumping into the water only helped because he only had 1. Had he had 3, that wouldn't have helped him. But Vibalt, he was smart enough to realize the danger and he quickly jumped into the water to save himself. Wisdom will make its owner alive because his knowledge saved his life. If someone eats 17 eggs, and 4 nuts, Vishav Butisa the Parchi, and 7 seeds of a Parchi, which is a tzlaf, and he'll be thirsty after that. And then Vishati Reviyasa the Dovcha, and he will drink a revius of honey. Bitkuvas Tamas, the Lublin strikes again, and he does this in the summer. Aliba Rekana, on an empty stomach, Misaker Hala de Libe. The mounts for a sart will all be uprooted. Doesn't sound like it's a good thing. Hubar Tavi, there was this fear that there was a shaila if it was a treifa or not. Dazala Beresh Galusa came to the house of the Reish Galusa. Have a mixed Karen Besraisa. It was missing the bottom of one of its rear legs. Botke Rab checked. The leg itself is not a problem, it's cut off, but the Tzumas Hagidin, if that was damaged, then it would be a treifa. So Botke Rab, the Tzumas Hagidin, and it was intact, and therefore Ba'achtre. So he wanted to eat it in umtza, meaning not by totally roasting it, rather he roasted it, he salted it a lot, and he roasted it a little bit. That's how he wanted to eat it. Shmuel said, how could you eat it? How did this leg fall off? You're not worried that a snake might have bitten it, and this leg might be full of venom, and it's dangerous for you to eat? So Rav said, what could I do? Put the whole thing in the oven. You'll see, from baking it in the oven, we'll be able to tell if it has venom in it. The piece of meat literally fell apart because the venom broke up the meat, and when they put it in the oven and heated it, the pieces literally fell apart, clearly a sign that there's venom here. So Shmuel felt that this was a nace that Rab was open to. So he said, Kari Shmuel later Rab, lo yu'una l'tzadik halobin. Something bad will happen to a tzadik. But Rab said, it was Shmuel's chus that I was saying. Kari Rab later Shmuel, kol roz, lo. Any secret is not held back from you because you're Shmuel, and therefore you had this idea to suggest that there might be this problem, and therefore you saved my life. Baruch Hashem, we were zocheh to finish that Nun Ches. Tomorrow we're going to learn Nun Tes.
Shkaya.
Shkaya.